Welcome to TalkNorth.com. Thanks to our longtime producer, Brandon Morton. Please download before you listen. If you'd like to advertise with us, you can reach us at talknorthpodcast@gmail.com. And please follow us on Twitter at TalkNorthPod. Two promo codes to be aware of. BiteSquad.com. Use the promo code TalkNorth to get your first delivery free. And go to SodaStick.com, the great local apparel company. Use the promo code YouBetcha to get free shipping on any sized order.
Thanks a lot for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on the show, Steve. Should be a good one. Thanks for having me, Steven.
Double S anytime, man.
Christopher Mando Russo here. You are listening to Steven Strom on TalkNorth.com.
Always passionate, always fiery. You're listening to the Strom Sports Show. Take it away, Steven.
Let's go, baby. We are back. Steven Strom here, TalkNorth.com. Big shout out to my producer, Brandon Morton, Jim Suhan on our website. We have finally made it, ladies and gentlemen. Week 1 of the NFL season. It has been a long summer if your baseball team stinks. Fortunately for me, I can't relate with my Minnesota Twins up 6.5 in the AL Central and being on fire. But week 1 is back, and week 1 means a lot of things. It means a fresh start. For some, it's the start of a new core. For others, it means the same group looking to finally break through. For Jet fans, it may mean going 1-0 automatically makes you a Super Bowl contender. And for Patriot fans, the season doesn't technically start until December. Every team has a different story coming into 2019, but they all share the same attitude today, as it is a clean slate for 30 teams today. I say 30 because the Packers and the Bears played Thursday night. Whatever happened last year is out the window. 8-7-1 Minnesota Vikings, I already forgot about that. Expectations for teams vary year to year, but the same expectations for the Vikings as they head into year 2 of the Kirk Cousins era, and it is the same expectation, and that is Super Bowl or bust. I want to try and keep my cool this year, unlike last year and my whole life, because I don't want to act like such a fan. We all know that the heart wants what it wants, and I sometimes lose my mind a little with this team, but I'm going to try to keep this radio show, this program, this podcast as professional as I can. But we all know I am authentic, I am passionate, that's why I'm in this industry, that's why I want to do it, because I can express my emotions, but I'm going to try to keep my cool this year. The same expectations for the Vikings, though, are the same. Anything short of a division-winning NFC North team is a disappointment. And for this year, Mike Zimmer, and we talked about it last year, our last show, is that Mike Zimmer is on the hot seat this year in my book. If he does not come out here and get this team to win 10, 11, 12 games and win this division and get to at least the NFC Championship, then this season is a bust. I mean, let's be honest here. We talked about it all year last year. The Vikings said they are missing one puzzle piece, and that was Kirk Cousins. They went out, they spent the money, they came out, they bring this guy in, they try to build their defense around him, and they get the weapons, they don't build the offensive line, they think that they can overcome it with just this Kirk Cousins signing, and it didn't work. I really like what they did in the offseason. They drafted Garrett Bradbury to move him to center, which moves Pat Eflon to his natural position at left tackle. They then go out and get Josh Klein from Tennessee. They fortified that offensive line to the point where you feel somewhat comfortable going into this Atlanta game. So let's get into the Atlanta game really quickly here, because I have Matthew Coller coming on. He'll preview the game for me. We also have my picks coming up in a little bit later in the show. We have Michael Hickman, Hick's Picks. That's my best friend. It's like you ever watch College Game Day and you see Bear, the producer for the show, he comes on and does the picks. That's basically what Hickman does. That's my guy. So we'll make our best picks. We did that last year when I was doing university radio, so we'll have that as well. I wanted to read you some interesting kind of stats and some comparisons with this game today, because the Falcons and the Vikings are eerily similar to the Atlanta Falcons and how their year went last year. So let me just read you a couple of things and some numbers that I put together. So first of all, the Falcons had a lot of injuries in the beginning of the year. They lost their linebacker, Deion Jones. Their safety, Canu Neal and Ricardo Allen to injuries in September. Same kind of thing happened with the Vikings with the Everson Griffin drama, with Dalvin Cook going down. Very similar injury-wise. They also were considered NFC favorites a year ago. I mean, they never lived up to the hype last year. It seemed like they can never get on the same page offensively and defensively. These are both teams that are led by defensive mind coaches. Dan Quinn, Mike Zimmer, so they're very defensive minded. Dan Quinn's calling the plays this year for the defense. He hadn't done that in a while. We know Mike Zimmer does it. And George Edwards is just the coordinator, but Zimmer likes to call his defense. They also had some of the worst luck in the league last year. This is a very interesting stat that I found this morning. The Vikings have a 33.3% fumble recovery rate. So meaning when the Vikings fumbled, they were not getting it back. Because a lot of times in the NFL, when you fumble the ball and you recover it, on your own, and it's a team recovery, you just forget about it. I mean, you forget about it, next play kind of mentality, and you don't think about it again. When you fumble and the other opposing team recovers it, that is a huge play, no matter where you are on the field. If you are at your 20, then the other team is going to score or get a field goal. If you are driving and you're in the red zone at the 20, you have screwed up an opportunity to score. The Falcons had a 37.7% fumble recovery rate, and the Vikings had a 33.3%. Both were league last in the NFL last year. So it just shows how sometimes from season to season, a lot of it is somewhat luck. I mean, the way the ball bounces is definitely a factor in how your season goes. This is a perfect example of two teams who came in with expectations, who I would say have pretty similar styles in terms of what they want to do. They want to run the ball first. They want to create play action. Matt Ryan and Kirk Cousins are very similar in the sense that they're not very mobile. They're accurate. They need an offensive line to succeed. I think that both of these teams are scary similar. Now, for the Vikings, here's my concern going into this game. Number one is the kicking battle. As crazy as I might sound, I think that both teams are so evenly matched. I think you give the nod at quarterback to the Falcons, but I think you give the nod to the defense for the Vikings. I think the offenses are both similar. This might come down to kicking. And if it comes down to kicking, who are you trusting right now? Are you really going to put your faith in Dan Bailey and this Vikings special teams that has just been awful, putrid, disgusting these last few years? And for the Falcons, they cut Tavecchio. They bring in Blair Walsh for a practice. He's terrible. They have to go call Matt Bryan, who's about 60 years old, to get him back to play for the Atlanta Falcons. This is going to come down, I think, to the kicking. And if it does, I don't trust Dan Bailey and the Vikings. I trust Matt Bryant, who's a consistent kicker. And this is just crazy because if you think both of these guys rank near the top in terms of points scored and accuracy percentage in NFL history. And I'm sitting here and I'm worried about the kicking performances from the Vikings. I mean, that shows how non-confident I am in this special teams. One thing that's going for the Vikings, they're 18-7-0 in the regular season and in the playoffs at US Bank Stadium. They've also won their first 3 home openers. So those are some stats for you, just some food for thought for you guys today. As we head in to week 1, where, and I don't want to overreact here, I know it's week 1, but you want to get off to a good start here. You go to Green Bay for week 2, then you go see Chicago in week 4. You're going to get 2 division games in the first 4 weeks. You want to get off here to a good start, especially because the middle of this season, they have to go to the Kansas City, they have to go to Dallas, and then they have to go to Seattle 3 out of 4 weeks. From week 9 to week 13, you go through a stretch where you could possibly go 0-3. You've got 5 primetime games this year. We understand that's not Kirk Cousins' forte. So this is a huge game on Sunday, and it's really going to give you a feel, and this is going to be a huge measuring stick on how the Vikings built this team going into this year. Did they do a good enough job on the offensive line? Do they have enough corner depth without Mike Hughes and Holton Hill? It's going to be a real good feel for how this team is going to be going into 2019-2020 season. Matthew Coller from Score North, he is up next here. He'll break down the Falcons and Vikings. Stick with us. We've got a awesome action-packed show for you guys today.
Hi, everybody. Christopher Mando Russo here. You are listening to Stephen Strom on TalkNorth.com.
And we're joined here by my buddy and the best of the best when it comes to Vikings football. That is Matthew Coller, the host of Purple Daily on Score North. Football is back, Matt. I know we just kind of chatted on the Packers-Bears game. A little underwhelming, but how's everything? It's got to be good to have football back, huh?
I mean, I was thinking about this the other day and just how long it's been since I've actually covered a real football game at US Bank Stadium. And I think that if you had gotten pregnant on the night that the Vikings lost to Week 17, you'd have the baby now, right? Like, that is how long it has been since we have actually been out there for a real game. So, yes, very exciting.
Very interesting analogy, too. I like that. All right, let's get into it here. Yeah, go.
I don't think that any Vikings fans were celebrating that one that night. So maybe not a lot of babies being born.
No, I think, yes, I would agree with that. First game of the season here for the Vikes, fresh off a 8-7-1 season. They return largely the same roster, I would say. The Falcons coming off a 7-9 season. Very similar in a lot of ways, I think. Both kind of defensive-minded coaches. Both struggled on the offensive line. Both battled injuries early on. Give me some things you're looking for in this matchup on Sunday, Matt.
Yeah, I think that, it starts a little bit for both of these teams with the offensive and defensive lines. I mean, you mentioned with Atlanta where they spend a couple of high draft picks on offensive linemen, and are those guys, Chris Lindstrom, is he going to be able to step in right away and face off with Linval Joseph at times? And is Caleb McGarry going to play? And, is he going to match up with Daniil Hunter? And if he doesn't, then who's playing and matching up and trying to slow down Daniil Hunter? And then how will the Atlanta Falcons deal with the pressure that comes from the outside from the Vikings? That's on that side of the ball very interesting to me because the Vikings in 2017 were able to impact Matt Ryan quite a bit with their pass rush and throw him off for pretty much the entire game. And I think that's always where the game plan begins for the Vikings defense. But on the other side too, Grady Jarrett is one of the most disruptive players in the NFL as an interior defensive lineman. And right away, Garrett Bradbury and Pat Elflein starting a new position, and Josh Klein is kind of looking for redemption from getting cut by the Tennessee Titans. So you have a questionable interior offensive line for the Vikings going up against a serious disruptor in the middle, and just how much that impacts the running game, how much that impacts Kirk Cousins will be very interesting to watch. So for me, it starts up there.
First big news coming out of, I guess, the Atlanta media room was Julio Jones might not play. I don't know what the status is now. I heard some rumors. He's playing. He's questionable. Whatever it may be. Assuming that he plays, Matt, what do you think Zimmer is going to do? Do you think he's going to trust Xavier Rhodes, who has shown he's kind of dropped off? Do you think he's going to trust him to go man-to-man on a guy like Julio Jones? Or do you think they might go a little zone, make sure maybe Harrison Smith is behind Xavier Rhodes? Give me your thoughts on that really quickly.
Well, I think one of the keys to this defense being as great as it has been over the last few years is the fact that you can put Xavier Rhodes man-on-man with whoever the other team's best wide receiver is. And it's key when you're talking about a team that has multiple weapons. Calvin Ridley showed a lot last year. Mohamed Sanu is a proven, very good NFL wide receiver. So if you have to give extra attention to Julio Jones, those guys are going to have a field day. And that's not even to mention the running backs they have coming out of the backfield and tight end Austin Hooper, who can go down the field. I mean, if you can't shut down Julio, or I should say slow down Julio at least, with one person, then things become a lot more challenging. And I think we will find out just how much Mike Zimmer is trusting Xavier Rhodes to bounce back this year, because Zimmer made it quite clear in the offseason that he was not happy with the performance from Xavier Rhodes last year. And the other thing, too, is that this team does not have a whole lot of depth at cornerback right now.
Yep.
They will eventually. When Mike Hughes comes back and with Holton Hill, it looks like they're going to keep Holton Hill, and he's going to come back halfway through the season after his suspension. So, I mean, until then, they don't really have much depth in the defensive backfield, so they've got to make it work with Xavier Rhodes. And it's always hard to tell, because Rhodes did look pretty poor in the preseason games, but how much effort is really going into that for games that don't matter? How much will matter in terms of his technique and how physical it is. That matchup, if Julio Jones does play, is going to be a really fascinating one. If he doesn't, then it's letting the Vikings completely off the hook here. I mean, that entirely changes everything. And then you don't